There is this great statistic out there that if I were to be in a room of 3,000 leaders and I asked everybody, do you have self-awareness? 95% of people would say, yes, I have self-awareness. But the reality is only 10 to 15% actually meet that criteria. Isn't that wild?
10 to 15%?
10 to 15.
That is a lot of given credibility there. That's assumptions being made.
Yes,
Oh,
and that
wow.
all rolls up to EQ. That is one of the key components of EQ, but it's deeper than that.
Welcome to Legacy Lounge, the podcast where you'll discover how to lead with purpose and build a legacy that matters. So if you're ready to step into your full potential, show up authentically for yourself and others, and create a lasting impact on the world, you're in the right place. Let's begin.
Welcome back to the Legacy Lounge. I am excited to introduce Coach Katie Murphy, a registered corporate coach, leadership strategist, and behavioral enthusiast. Katie's DISC, D-I-S-C, certification also allows her to have a specific expertise in transforming how leadership approach different situations across all industries. Today's conversation is going to be not only valuable and insightful with Katie, but you're going to want to stay till the end because I think she's got something pretty cool that she's going to offer this audience. So Katie, welcome and hello.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Yes, I am so happy to have this conversation with you today. And I just appreciate upfront you dedicating some of your very valuable time to have a conversation with me about leadership and about the power of legacies in the making. And I love to start with this question with anybody that I get the chance and opportunity to interview. But whose legacy in your life has profoundly influenced how you choose to show up as a leader today?
My dad.
So sweet.
He's retired now, but his profession was hospital CEO. And he had this innate ability to guide people and organizations through very tough and challenging times. He never lost sight of his focus, which was always the community in which the hospital that he led was in. And you can imagine there were a lot of different agendas out there. He had a board that he reported into. He had very demanding physicians. He had nurses and staff in the community who all had an opinion about how a hospital, should run and evolve in its community. And he did everything from, enhancing a small rural hospital. So they had the technologies and the expertise to meet the needs of their community rather than their community going 30 miles away to a larger hospital. And then he even merged himself out of a job once. Again, knowing it was the right thing for the community. It was a hospital that would not have existed unless he merged it with a larger healthcare system. So he went through that and he lost his job because of it, but it always went back to what was the right thing to do. Maybe not the most popular, but the right thing to do.
Man, is that needed more today than ever before. And there is so much power in just that simple, insightful acknowledgement to him. And even from the lens of being an authentic leader, authenticity to yourself, especially coming from different generations, can look very differently. And doing the right thing, even when you might be the only one that is responding that way, is really difficult for that person to navigate. So that is incredibly powerful as an example. Do you think that there's a specific maybe moment with him or maybe a situation that kind of offered maybe a different perspective for you on what he actually was doing and the impact that it was having, or how decisions were influencing people and other leaders day in and day out?
There was a pivotal moment that I think he had the opportunity to respond in an unprofessional and ungraceful like way when he was being met with a lot of disagreement with building onto the hospital and the community. And there was a particular community member that spit on him as he was doing an interview with a local news station. And can you imagine being spit on and what your reaction could be?
No, I
And
cannot.
I know. And that's where I say his superpower kicked in, where he could have reacted. He could have said something inappropriate back, but he didn't. He kept on going. He had empathy for the community and their concerns about, higher taxes and things like that. But where it really resonated with me is then the next day I was in school and one of my teachers pulled me aside and said, "Katie, I saw your dad on the news last night. And I know that there's a lot of people who are against this expansion. I want you to know that if my wife had an emergency C-section, I would want a hospital 5 minutes away and not 30 minutes away. So I support your dad." And I think that was the moment where I realized his impact in the community. Before, he was just my dad, right? He'd go off to work, come home for dinner, and I didn't necessarily know what he was doing or the decisions he was making. But it certainly was a measurable moment in time that I will always remember.
I love that. And how powerful and incredible for the teacher also that pulled you aside to affirm that this is the right decision, but even how it's being handled, there's another layer to that is part of that lasting legacy in the making. And it is staying true to your morals in those hard moments when you really don't want to, but you know it's the right thing to do. How powerful.
Yeah.
Well, it that kind of takes me into honestly assuming that has stayed with you throughout your leadership experience and your in and out of your own life. And so, how does influence show up in how you develop other leaders?
Yeah, I would say the fundamentals of leadership that's always stayed with me and is the foundation of my consulting practice right now is that when you do make a mistake and you mess up, take ownership over that. Let the ego move to the side. We're all humans. I would say when it comes to listening to your people and putting them in positions to succeed was really foundational for me and how I saw my dad advocate and recruit for the hospital. And then lastly, I would say making everybody's jobs easier, whether that's through new technology, whether that's through process improvement, or maybe it's through assessments, behavioral assessments, and understanding your behavior in the workplace. Those are the things that I really saw through my dad that's helped me build my legacy. And if anyone were to say, "Tell me about Katie Murphy," those are the things that I would be proud to hear.
I love it. And I think that's a huge piece of not only personal growth and development, but the dynamic of the team that you build and having the right strengths, the right experiences, the right visions, all be something that can comfortably be talked about in a group setting and facilitate the group to move in the right direction with the strength from each of them. I absolutely love that. Prior to us getting to record this specific episode, I was able to have a conversation with you about somewhere in our career that overlapped a little bit. And for listeners that this might be the first one you're catching, my previous corporate experience was with Target. And years ago, Katie was also a part of the Target crew. And one short insight that I got that I think would be phenomenal to share with this audience is about a moment from the Greatland Target T28 from way long ago and how that specific opportunity, that specific conversation, that specific, experience really shaped a moment in your life that allowed you to make a choice that maybe wasn't the easiest one to make, but it was the right one to make to put you on a path forward that you wanted to go down. So anything from that story that you would feel comfortable sharing or gaining insight for our listeners, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I would love to share. Earlier in my career, I think my largest opportunity was working with people who had a different communication style, different leadership philosophy than me. And I was growing in my career, and I had a store director that did have differing communication style than my own. And I found myself just complaining about it a lot to my peer, doing what was asked of me, but doing it with like a chip on my shoulder and making a promise to myself that what I was seeing in her behaviors is not what I wanted to be as a leader. And it wasn't anything so serious. It was just about her focusing on details instead of the larger picture, and me not feeling like I was contributing in the highest possible way, which is what I was used to. So that relationship wasn't great. However, I got promoted out of her store. And 2 years later, I found myself as a new store director opening a new store in the Chicago market with 6 direct reports that were pre-selected for me because I came from a different market. And I knew how to open stores. I just opened up 2 Super Targets in 2 years. So I came with the mindset that I know what I'm doing. Now I just need to inspire these very young, very motivated, very talented individuals to open a store in 6 weeks. And I was really struggling with one of those executives who wasn't agreeing with my approach and how I was handling a deliverable that we were putting together for my peer group. And it was 6 of us putting all of this content together, and I wanted it to look seamless. And so I was looking at the little details like fonts and things like that. And he had bigger things on his mind, and he shared them with me, and he would push back. And again, my mindset was, I earned the right to be here, but I can't say that to him. So I removed myself from the situation, sat in my car, and it flashed. Those 2 years ago that I had with that particular store director flashed in front of my eyes. And as a people pleaser, it never really sat well with me that I didn't have a great relationship with her. So I just decided to call the store, hoping she would be there. She answers, and I apologized. I took ownership over my role and not being more of a collaborative partner with her. And she thanked me for that and was able to coach me through the situation that I found myself in, and was a great partner for me as I was opening up this new store as a store director. And so what I learned there is that moment was probably more of a gift to me than it was to her. That it is okay to say, hey, I messed up, so you can do better next time or not repeat it. And it's also really important to know that working styles of others is very important to adapt to. So those were the 2 learning experiences that I think really pivoted me into a kind of higher level of leadership. And I'm forever grateful for that experience and that moment with her.
Whoa, first of all. And I got to give you some major kudos, because to reach out of the blue like that 2 years after a relationship that maybe had that point of friction or ended in conflict and friction where it didn't feel resolved, you had that experience flash in your mind and make the choice in that moment to pick up the phone and not only apologize, but absorb the opportunity to learn through that to then take back to your own team. That is a strong moral compass right there, and a major thread line from your upbringing.
Thank you. I guess I have my dad to thank for that. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. Well, I do think too, especially in the way that the workforce is changing and different demographics are now being seen at different levels of leadership, there is a lot of overlap between behavioral styles of people and emotional intelligence. And that isn't meant to come across as a dig, but I believe that a lot of people struggle to understand that emotional intelligence is a learnable skill. A lot of times in our life, we've been raised to believe you're either emotional intelligent or you are not. And it is fascinating to me how much you can learn if you choose to embrace it. And you can not only learn a lot about yourself, but learn how to maneuver in some really sticky situations. You can understand different styles of your own team and how to be dynamic as a leader, but also really functional in how you lead across multiple people from different styles through that emotional impact.
Absolutely.
What would you say is the connection between emotional intelligence and a lasting impact? Because I do think that when it is led from a place of, I am doing the right thing, even when I know they don't want to hear it right now, how that maybe can then transform into having a very positive, lasting impact, even though in the moment it might be kind of hard to see that.
Yeah, I mean, EQ is a soft skill, but it is a strategic asset, and it will set you apart when it comes to growing your career as a leader. And you're right, it's not something that you have to innately be born with. Some of us are born with more empathy than others, but EQ is a larger indicator of success for leaders than IQ. And I just want people to kind of take that in for a minute.
Emotional intelligence, EQ, is a higher quality of a leadership attribute than IQ. That
Yes.
is gold.
And I think it was always, the soft skill really takes away its impact on what it can do. I mean, if you cultivate all of the elements of what emotional intelligence is and you do it well, that's transformation. And so that starts with self-awareness. And there is this great statistic out there that if I were to be in a room of 3,000 leaders and I asked everybody, do you have self-awareness? 95% of people would say, yes, I have self-awareness. But the reality is only 10 to 15% actually meet that criteria. Isn't that wild?
10 to 15%?
10 to 15%.
That is a lot of given credibility there. That's assumptions being made.
Yes,
Oh,
and that
wow.
all rolls up to EQ. That is one of the key components of EQ, but it's deeper than that. It is understanding your emotional triggers and how you manage that and emotional triggers of others. How amazing would it be if you could anticipate or see signs of someone burning out?
Amazing. Yeah.
I'll tell another real quick personal story about this. It's the reason why I left one of my jobs is I was feeling the burnout. And I always prided myself on not missing deadlines. And there was a deadline that I missed. And anyone who knows me would have been like, okay, Katie, tell me what's going on. Why did you miss this deadline? I had a leader who didn't care. What was happening is I was burnt out and I missed the deadline. And I'm not even sure I cared about missing the deadline. It didn't seem like it was a critical deadline for me. And that was the mind space I was in because I was burnt out. What he saw is that I missed a deadline and sends me a one-line email that says, don't miss another deadline again. If he could have just sat back with that and said, this is not characteristic of Katie as a leader, I'm just going to check in. Let's check in and see how she's doing. It's not the end of the world. Take that minute. And that's just another great example of what emotional intelligence is. And so you can take someone from who resigns a week later to someone that you can sustain in your company and help build and grow. It's just a powerful, like I said, asset that every leader should really check and balance themselves against.
I really love that example that you shared. And I want to go back to what you said about the one sentence email that you received that said, never miss a deadline again. That moment of observation would have been so powerful for you, for your peers, and for the entire team who didn't even see that email was happening behind the scenes between you and your boss. But had your boss made an attempt to say, hey, Katie, this is way out of character for you. How you doing? Are you okay? Is there anything you want to talk about? Even if you would have said no, that would have made you feel seen in that moment. And those opportunities, from my own personal experience, I know are missed very frequently. And especially in a retail environment or even a small business owner who has a brick and mortar location that the public can come in and out of, they are responsible for everything that happens in that footprint of a business. And when something tragic happens or something scary happens or someone comes in and they go into labor and then you call 911 and they pick her up and they get her to the hospital, that missing piece is anybody making a choice to go back to the person in charge and say, hey, how you doing? Are you okay? Do you have anything that you want to talk about? I'm here for you. If you need to sit in silence, I can do that with you. And I've seen over a magnitude of positions and levels of leadership where everybody notices what's happening and they choose to say nothing, whether it's out of fear that they don't want to come across as too personal. But I think as a leader dynamic, the IQ of the specific skill set that you come with and you bring to the team, super valuable. But as a leader, the most critical skill set is how strong your emotional intelligence taps into opportunities just like that one. And in that moment, choosing to take it a step further to go build the connection with your team. Go build the connection with maybe even a stranger, but you're going to be, as a leader, allowing them to be seen. And I love that example and wanted to add that in because I do think that it's a huge opportunity for leaders of any level, any responsibility scope in current day life as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Just check in. And it was a missed opportunity to re-motivate me. Those leaders that have a high EQ, they are driven by innate reasons versus external rewards. And you have to be very clear on what is driving you, what your purpose is, what your values are. The company is going to show you who they are through the policies they have and, the people that they hire. And it's up to you to say, I am aligned with that or I am not aligned with that. But everybody needs to adapt to everybody at some level. A CEO needs to adapt to their chief technology officer, even though they're the CEO. And the more you do that, the more you connect with people, the more they feel engaged, the better productive they are, the healthier environment and culture that you see. It's just a win-win, but you have to be self-aware of where you are across this criteria.
Yes.
And so you mentioned DISC, DISC.
Yes.
And that is a behavioral assessment that can either tell you that you're right about what you think your strengths are, what you think your challenges and weaknesses are, how you show up in the workplace, how you are perceived by others under stress. It is a great way to just reinforce how you show up. And you should have that curiosity about others as well. So
Yes.
I am a huge proponent of assessments. I know you and I talked about the easy part is doing it and seeing the results. The hard part is interpreting that, putting that into action, and really understanding what can I do to be that better leader, to have that higher EQ, to make more of an impact with my people.
Yes. And I think, to your point, taking an assessment of any kind is to provide you with insight. What you choose to do with that insight once you have it is where the magic lies. And I think what's really amazing about you and your credentials and everything that you have achieved is you are that sweet spot that says, okay, this doesn't mean it's good or bad or right or wrong, but here is how that is going to show up as a leader in your position or to your teams or in your family on your day-to-day life. And to me, that is the type of support that allows you to live in your legacy in action, your legacy in the making as a leader through the platform that you have. And I just have a couple questions. I'm going to kind of lump into one because I think this could go a lot of different ways. But how do you help intentionally build the direction that those leaders go after they get their results, or how you align their current actions along with supportive actions they could do to help them move through the application process that better aligns them in the direction of the legacy that they want?
Well, I think first it's a mirror, the results of that assessment, and me as a coach delivering the debrief of that. is just being a mirror to how your behaviors, how you respond in the workplace, whether it's to people and problems, whether it's to how you influence others to your point of view. Let's say that you are now needing to report to a board of directors and you're working on your ability to influence and you're not quite sure where your skills and competencies fall. This is a great mirror into here's how naturally being an influencer does or does not show up in you. If it shows up on you, it's going to be observable by others, and we can work through some techniques to get you just more confident around that. Or it could be something that requires your intention. So preparing for a speech in front of a board of directors and delivering that is going to suck out all your energy. So what do you need to know about yourself to replenish that energy or to reward yourself for doing something that required your intention? So I think there's practical aspects just depending on what are you trying to solve for? What is maybe an obstacle, a perceived obstacle, or maybe something that's going to be happening in the future? Here's where your strengths lie across dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliancy, which is where that DISC comes in. And the good news is everybody has these behaviors. They just have them at varying spectrums and varying degrees. And so to your point, there is no right disc, there is no wrong disc. Disc is disc. It's your disc. And so I think where I really take pride is that they're going away with an understanding of what is observable and fairly easy for them when it comes to certain characteristics and decisions you make in the workplace and what doesn't. And I can give you one example that I think is really telling. And that is, I was working with a young sales professional. And as you know, in sales, you assume the person's going to be very strong in client relationships and just people relationships. This young director was so stressed out, and it wasn't until that we did his disc that we realized that customer relationships and people focus is something that takes his intention. It was like 11 and 12 out of 12 workplace characteristics.
Wow.
And so I think that was an eye-opening moment for him. And he had to say, okay, can I meet my goals by doing something else, or do I want to stay here? So I'm going to stay here. I know that I'm going to be anxious. I know I'm going to have less energy for my new dog and my fiance at home. But knowing that and working on techniques on how to alleviate that for him was so powerful. He had no idea that that was something that required more of his focus.
Yes. And I know I had shared this with you. I took DISC the first time myself back in probably 2012. It was in college in one of my courses. And then I took it again, maybe 8 years later, as a salaried store manager for Target. And then I took it again 4 years after as a new role as a senior director. But when I did it the third time, I also had purchased access for my direct leaders to take it. And it was the first time a lot of my team had heard about the assessment, but that provided so much insight for me and was very helpful for me in, again, not judging myself, but putting a clear understanding of what I know my natural style is and how that's a strength for me, but then reflecting on how that might conflict with some of my team's natural styles or their impact. And I've seen this and I've heard this magnitude of times in my career, but your team is expected to adjust to you, to your style, right? And I've never agreed with that. I have always taken the approach, my job as the leader is to adjust my own style to that of my direct report in order to get the best and the most authenticity out of them and highlight their possibly natural skill set that to me is a superpower because they are the only ones on the team that have that skill set. How do we tap into that more? Because it's also natural to you and you enjoy it. And there's more impact that you can provide to the greater team when we focus on your strengths. Now, at the same time, in areas that are uncomfortable or we've got some opportunities to grow, then I know where I kind of need to start asking the right questions differently in order to provide the right support. And I share that for our listeners at any point in time when you catch this episode. If you are responsible to lead a team of any size, this evaluation is something you have to do for yourself and for your team. And from a personal lens, not professional, do it with your family. I mean, think of the power of the relationship dynamic that could change in a household if they all went into this together and what they would learn about each other. It is incredible to me.
Yeah, there is really no line between our professional lives and our personal lives. How we show up and manage conflict at home with our partner, our spouse, our siblings, parents. It's the same approach that we do at work. And really truly understanding that is an essential of leadership. It's not a nice to have, it's essential. And what these assessments do is they give you an amazing shortcut for you to gain the insights on how all of your direct reports made decisions, what motivated them, how they communicated. Naturally, that would take about a year to figure all of that out just through interactions, communications, and things like that. But assessment will give you that amazing shortcut in a matter of minutes. And that's where transformation begins. And when I say essential, I mean that it takes time. And a lot of leaders out there are like, I don't have time. I barely have enough time to meet my KPIs, let alone do an assessment with my team, get to understand what motivates them. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing that, your team is not producing at their full potential. They're not engaged. And you might have to make some tough decisions to make time to do this. You might have to put some things to the side. You might have to say, you know what, this task right here, this project is not critical right now. My team and understanding them is critical. And that's why I say it's essential.
Absolutely agree. And I do think you said it, like the awareness from the insight in a shorter time frame can help strengthen teams, therefore drive the results positively a lot faster. It's just the leader making the choice. Building relationships matter. Getting to know my team from an emotional intelligent level matters. I absolutely love it. Well, before we wrap up, how can our listeners connect with you or learn more about your work? And are there any final thoughts that you would like to share with our audience?
Yes, so you can reach me on LinkedIn or at KJM Either way, you will see thought leadership, what my practice is all about, a little bit about DISC. If you are high in dominance and facts and figures matter to you, call me. Let's talk. I can share what DISC is about and the science behind it and how it's tied to the lie detector test, because there's a really unique connection between the DISC and who created the lie detector test. If you're someone who thinks they're influential and they're not quite sure at what degree, let's talk about it. I'll tell you how DISC can get you there. And so what I wanted to provide your listeners, and you gave a little teaser at the beginning, so I appreciate that.
Yes.
Is because I care so much about this, and it's not a big time commitment or money investment. It just isn't. But I will give all of your listeners and your community 20% off a DISC assessment and 2 hours of my time so we can talk through the insights that make you the beautiful you that you are. And what you choose to do with that is up to you. If you have your own business or executive coach, you can even bring them into the conversation. There's so many things that we can do. It could be a short-term solution. It could be establishing our relationship together. But right now, for the rest of 2025, for anyone who listens to you and mentions Legacy Fulfilled or Legacy Lounge, you're going to get that 20% off.
My goodness. Thank you, Katie. Look at this.
Even Oliver's
wants in
excited.
too. Yeah, Oliver wants in too. Yes. Listen,
Yeah.
if you, regardless if you have or have not taken DISC in your previous experience, take it again, because the intention behind it, just from listening to this episode, can open up the door for so much powerful transformation, both internally and with your team. And Katie, I cannot thank you enough for graciously, one, giving us your time today and allowing me to interview you about your legacy in the making and the power of the legacy that your dad planted in you years ago. It's beautiful. But on top of that, thank you for truly investing into this mission of Legacy Fulfilled. And for the Legacy Lounge listeners, thank you for going an extra mile to provide them an opportunity and a resource that can truly just benefit themselves. Because again, it's the right thing to do. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I will
Well,
ask,
thank
do
you
have
for the time.
any closing statements, thoughts, or anything before we wrap up?
Hope just if you're a leader out there, understand how you lead, be proactive in growing your leadership skills, regardless of what level you are at, and find joy in what you're doing and peace in where you're doing it. The DISC assessment can validate that for you or show you other paths to go down. So thank you for your time. It's my pleasure to be here with your listeners. I want nothing more than to help leaders upskill themselves so they can take that down to their people so they can do those things too. That the effort that you put in and the learnings that you get make a ripple effect on your team, and they can understand the importance of joy and peace in what they're doing and where they're doing it.
Absolutely. And that ripple effect will 100% represent your legacy as well. Thank you for tuning in to another powerful episode of Legacy Lounge, where we explored authentic leadership and the power of staying true to yourself while creating a meaningful impact. Until next time, this is Brin'na reminding you that your legacy is being written every day, so make it count.
That's it for this episode of Legacy Lounge, a podcast dedicated to empowering you to lead with purpose. Remember, leadership begins with you. When you're connected to your values, strengths, and authentic self, you show up powerfully for your team, businesses, and everyone you lead. To authentically lead others, you must first lead yourself. I challenge you to consider, how are you investing in your personal growth to create a legacy that you envision? Thank you for joining me in the Legacy Lounge. If this episode sparked any thoughts or inspired action, I'd love to hear from you. I'm your host, Brin'na Rollins-Williams. Connect with me on LinkedIn or other socials, and let's continue the conversation. Remember, your legacy is built one intentional step at a time.